I'm going to demonstrate the assembly and fastening of the toggle clamps for the Coyote and Wolf craft and knife vises. The only tools you need are a 1/2 inch open end wrench and a 3/16 Allen or hex key. You do not need to assemble these to the toggle clamps themselves before bolting the toggle clamps onto the body of the knife vise, but you may find that it's easier to do so. But either order will work. You can assemble the screw assemblies in advance or after the toggle clamps are bolted onto the actual body of the vise. So you take the screw assembly that will already have the knob Loctited onto the end and the star washer, put on a flat washer, a flange washer. Flange washer, you want the flanges facing towards the loop of the clamp. You slide this through the loop of the clamp. Install another flange washer on the other opposing side, and a flat washer. And then install the long hex nut. On the end of the stud assembly, unscrew a jam nut. These are the nuts that are very short in height. Install a flat washer. And then install the pressure pad. You want the pressure pad installed such that the stud is retracted below the surface, maybe a 1/16 to an 1/8 of an inch, just to be sure that it doesn't protrude down further. Typically, just hand tight will keep this secured over time. You can always retighten it, of course, or if you need to disassemble it, it'll make it easier to disassemble. So that's one clamp assembly, and we'll go ahead and do the other one. Again, washer, flange washer, install it through the loop, another opposing flange washer, flat washer, the long hex nut, jam nut, flat washer, and the pressure pad. Set the height. You can typically just do this by eye. And go ahead and tighten up the jam nut against the pressure pad, and that should hold it in place well enough. So that's two clamp assemblies assembled, and now we just simply need to attach them to the body of the vise unit. Now I will demonstrate the installation of the trap door onto the back of the unit. The kit comes with a printed trap door and a 1/4 inch flat washer and 1/4 28 thumb screw. This unit here is the Wolf model, has a 3 by 3 inch housing. Effectively, when you subtract the radii on the inside, gives you a 2.5 inch interior area to work with. The trap door is very easily secured onto the nut that's welded onto the rear of the unit. This illustrates the door in the closed position. If you need to pass through larger work pieces, longer in this case than 8 inches, you can swing the trap door out of the way like such, and your working piece can then travel further through the rear of the unit. You can also, of course, take the door right off. This just requires light finger pressure to keep it tight, and it should be fine. Now I'm going to demonstrate assembling the clamp assemblies to the fixture body, the Vise fixture body. You can do this on the bench. I went ahead and mounted it in the Vise just to make it a little easier to illustrate this. But all you do is simply place your clamp on the top of the unit. Finger start your fasteners. It may be easier to do this with a wrench, but do not tighten them down until you've got all four started, just to be sure that you can go ahead and find the holes and get these all started in place. Once they're all started and hand tight, look at your clamp, make sure it's lined up pretty well, nice and parallel to the body of the unit. And then you can go ahead and torque these. The torque instructions and values are in the assembly instructions. I'm not going to demonstrate actually torquing these this moment here. I'm just going to tighten them by hand. And there's the first clamp assembly installed. To use this, you just simply, if you need to retract it out of the hole, you can just back off the star knob, and get it up out of the hole. That would then allow you to use the clamp in the side position for vertically clamping parts if you like. I will go ahead and assemble this. It's hard to get your fingers in along the side of the clamp, so you may find it's easier just to use the hex wrench to go ahead and start these. Again, just finger tight initially until you make sure you have this well aligned, nice and parallel to the body. So go ahead and tighten these down. This is where you would torque them to actual torque value. I'm not going to demonstrate that for the purposes of this video. And there's the second clamp in place for using for vertical part orientation clamping. Now you may find in some cases that these clamps may have an alignment issue from the factory. This loop is not always perfectly on center on the end here, side to side on the body. This is illustrated in the instructions. If that is the case, you can go ahead and just use a simple crescent wrench. Make sure you're all the way back on the loop, and you can just tweak this just very gently. It doesn't take much pressure, and you can get it nice and lined up to the hole. That one there was off just slightly, and with just a little bit of pressure, they got it right centered up on the hole. like how you would like to use it. And that's it. That's the vise assembly fully assembled with 2 toggle clamps, one for horizontal part orientation and one for vertical part orientation. Now I will demonstrate how you may like to mount the vise. 3 different options. You can mount it in a vise. I'm showing it here mounted in some rubber jaws just to protect the paint in this case, but you can of course clamp it up in the hard jaws. It's anticipated that that'll, you know, scuff up the paint, but you know, it's like any tool. Things maybe tend to get beat up a little bit over time, but you can clamp it right into the vise if you like, or you can mount it to the bench. 2 different methods. You can use C-clamps as shown here. You could C-clamp, you know, temporary mount to the bench if you like. So you can do it this way, and you know, make sure it's good and secured to the bench. Or the other option is, if you prefer, you could drill 2 5/16 or 3/8 holes through the flange on either side, the mounting flange here, and down through the bench, and then of course you could bolt it to the bench if you prefer to have it more permanently mounted that way. And here it is mounted back in the vise. Now I will demonstrate how you may utilize the Coyote or Wolf craft/knife vise. Each vise kit comes with 2 sets of liners, a 1/4-inch plywood and 1/4-inch black HPDE, high density polyethylene. So depending on what you're working on, you may determine to utilize the different liners accordingly. You know, if you're working on a handle, for example, that you want to protect, you might want to use the plastic liners, versus if you're just clamping on a blade, you may find that the wood liner may work better for you. You'll see that on the back of the vise here, got the trap door closed. That'll eliminate parts from passing through and will help retain the liners. But if you do have a longer part that you need to pass through, you can of course swing the door down like this or remove it. We'll use it in a closed position here. If you slide the liners in, they will stop up against the trap door at the rear. Then you can take your workpiece and install it between the liners. The way the toggle clamp works is the long hex nut here, or if you choose to use the optional short nut, this adjusts the actual tension down onto the liners to clamp your part into the chamber of the vise. The longer hex nut is easier to grab onto, but if you find that you're in a situation where you need to utilize the shorter nut that comes with the kit, you can of course do so. So you can adjust tension by rotating the hex nut to extend the stud to be longer or shorter. It takes a little bit of feel to get this how you want it. You'll become more accustomed to it over time. But if you find that your part is too loose in here, you can of course tighten up the hex nut a little bit further and tighten down on your part. Of course, if you have a part that's fragile, you want to be careful not to put too much pressure on it. And then to release, you just you pull up on the lever to release the part, and then you know, if you need to swap out parts, you of course release the lever, and then put pressure back down onto it to lock it back in place. Now you will find that if you have the adjustment screw more towards the front of the unit, out towards the front of the hole, you may have less clamp pressure, less clamp load or force than if you bias it more towards the rear. You'll find you'll have a bit more holding power if you bias it more towards the rear. So with your part in here, then of course you can go ahead and do filing on it, sanding, buffing, whatever you need to do. You will find that these style clamps have real good normal load. It'll hold the part in normal direction, load-wise very well. It will resist pull-out very well, but under very high aggressive filing or sanding, let me tighten this up a little bit more. You may notice the part might want to shift side to side to you a little bit, and therefore you'll need to tighten up the clamp a little bit further. This is not too bad right here. This is probably about where you want it for medium to fine sanding. It should hold it well. If you're going to be real aggressive filing or sanding, you're going to find that side to side load, just as if you were in any other type of ice, may not hold as well as it does in the actual clamp direction. So that's if you want to mount a part horizontally. I'll go ahead and release this part now and show you that if you separate the star knob and the long hex nut and kind of angle this up out of here, you can then retract this out of position such that you can then rotate your liners in the event that maybe you want to mount your part vertically as such, and therefore you want to bring in the clamp from the side for vertical clamping. Feed that into the hole. This may seem a little cumbersome at first getting these adjustments, but you'll find, especially when working with the same thickness materials over and over, if you're doing multiple, maybe a half dozen of the same type of part, something like that, you'll find that the repeatability is pretty well once works pretty well once you get it adjusted. So same routine. Get the tension how you like it to clamp your part in here, using the long hex nut, and then clamp it in, and then likewise now you can use this to work on your part in a vertical fashion. You need to sand, buff, file, even if you want to do clamp and glue ups, that sort of thing. Now you can do it in a vertical orientation.